Hey, what's up guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in today's video, I want to talk about key changes again. I just made a video last week about key changes. In this video, I want to talk about some popular song examples that use some common key changes. So before we get into the examples, I want to make sure that you understand a few things first. So the number one most important thing that I want you to understand is that every single video that I've ever made, every single concept that has ever been taught from Zombie Guitar or from the Zombie Guitar YouTube channel, it all stems from the understanding that we operate from the 12-key model. So there are two different models that are taught in Western music theory. One of them is the 12-key model. That's the one that I teach. That's the one that I subscribe to. And then you have the 24-key model, otherwise known as the 30-key model. And it's not that that's wrong, and it's not that the 12-key model is right or vice versa. It's just that the two models are different. So I made a super detailed video about this a few months back. It's called The Fundamental Misunderstanding of Music Theory. The fundamental misunderstanding of music theory is a result of not knowing which model you are following. Some sources of information are teaching from the 24-key perspective, and other sources of information, such as myself, are teaching from the 12-key perspective. So if you are not clear on which perspective or which model that you are following, or which model you're subscribed to, you will be confused. That is the fundamental misunderstanding of music theory. So the basic premise of the 12-key model is that there are 12 keys, each of which has 7 chords. Each of the 7 chords within any of the 12 keys could potentially act as the tonal center. The 12 parent major keys are each listed on the outer circle of the circle of fifths as you see here. You'll notice that there's 12 spots on the outer circle. Each of those is representative of one of the 12 possible parent major keys. In any of the 12 possible parent major keys, you have 7 chords. 3 of those chords are going to be major chords. 3 of those chords are going to be minor chords. One of those chords is going to be a diminished type of chord. This circle of fifths that you see here only displays major chords on the outer circle and minor chords on the inner circle, so it's not going to display that 7th chord, that diminished chord. So for this video, we're only going to be focusing on 6 of the 7 total chords within each of the possible keys. And in popular music, you're going to find that usually it's mostly major and minor chords anyway. That 7th chord, that half diminished chord that's found in any of the 12 keys, it doesn't come up all that much. It comes up from time to time in popular music, but it's mostly major and minor chords. So we're just going to focus on that for this video. For any of the 12 possible parent major keys, you will find a grouping of 6 here on the circle of fifths that show you the 3 major chords and the 3 minor chords that are found in that given key. So for example, the parent major key of C major contains these 3 major chords and these 3 minor chords. The parent major key of G major contains these 3 major chords and these 3 minor chords. The parent major key of, say, B flat major has these 3 major chords and these 3 minor chords in it. This grouping of 6 is so important. I talk about this all the time, and it is the fundamental principle of the 12-key model. So let me explain what I mean here. So let's just look at the parent major key of C major, which contains these 3 major chords and these 3 minor chords. Now, any of these chords could potentially be the tonal center within this key. So if you make the C major chord to be the tonal center, then you would call the key of C major. In modal speak, it would be known as an Ionian chord progression. Let me give you an example of what that sounds like real quick. So I started on the C major chord, I ended on the C major chord, I played some of the other chords that were found in this grouping of 6, but most people would agree that the tonal center, the home chord, the feeling of resolution was the C major chord. Therefore, that was the tonal center within this key. So let me give you another example that uses the same key here, the same grouping of 6, but I'm going to dictate another one of the chords to be the tonal center. I'm now going to dictate the A minor chord to be the tonal center. All right, so that time I started on the A minor chord, I ended on the A minor chord, I used some other chords within the grouping of 6, but that A minor chord, it felt as the tonal center. It felt like the resolution chord. It felt like if I had to pick one of those chords that I could say, hey, which one of those is home? A minor chord is the one I would pick, and I think most other people listening would also agree with that. So that is what is known as a minor key. So notice that the A minor chord was also in the center of the grouping of 6, but it was in the inner circle this time. So when you choose the center chord within the grouping of 6 on the inner circle, that is known as an Aeolian chord progression. It's commonly referred to as just a minor key, but in modal terms, it is known as an Aeolian chord progression. So the two most common types of modal chord progressions that you're going to find are going to be Ionian chord progressions and Aeolian chord progressions. Ionian chord progressions simply mean that within this grouping of 6 on the circle of fifths, the outer circle center chord is the one designated as the tonal center. Aeolian chord progressions simply mean that within this grouping of 6, you take the chord that's in the center position on the inner circle and you designate that to be the tonal center. Those are the two most common types of modal chord progressions, except in popular music, you typically don't hear it referred to as Ionian chord progressions and Aeolian chord progressions. We just call it major keys, minor keys, the key of C major, the key of A minor. But despite the fact that the center chords are the most commonly used chords as tonal centers within a key, that's not to say that you still can't designate the other chords within the grouping of 6 to be your tonal centers. You absolutely can. So a Mixolydian chord progression is based on the outer circle clockwise position, which in this case would be the G major chord. So let's hear this. So this time I started and ended on the G major chord. I also used other chords from this grouping of 6. I didn't use any outside chords at all. I remained 100% in the same grouping of 6 that I have been the entire time. It's just that now the G major chord was the tonal center. So that is defined as a Mixolydian chord progression. Mixolydian is always represented by the outer circle clockwise chord, which in this case is a G major chord. All right, so in these examples, we're not going to be looking at a ton of modal chord progressions. And when I say modal chord progressions, I'm talking about chord progressions other than the super popular Ionian or super popular Aeolian types of chord progressions. I just want you to understand that under the 12-key model, you have 12 keys, each of which has 7 potential tonal centers. That is how the 12-key model works. So let's go on to the examples now. All right, so the first example is going to be Keep On Rockin' in a Free World by Neil Young. So this uses a relative key change. Now, under the 12-key model, this isn't even considered a key change. This is considered to remain in the same key the entire time. So this song takes place in the parent key of G major, which contains these 3 major chords and these 3 minor chords. So the verses are based on the E minor chord, which is in the inner circle center position. So this is an Aeolian chord progression within this key. All right, so that's the Aeolian perspective of this key, otherwise known as the key of E minor. It then switches to the Ionian perspective of this key in the choruses. All right, so that's the Ionian perspective of the same key now. The tonal center is now the outer circle center position, which in this case is the G major chord. So that's a relative key change. You switched from the key of E minor to the key of G major, and then back to the key of E minor for the next verse, and then back to the key of G major for the next chorus. It's the same key according to the 12-key model. All right, so this next example is the song We Can Work It Out by the Beatles. So it starts out in the exact same key signature that we used in the previous example, which is the parent major key of G major, except it starts out from the Mixolydian perspective of this key signature. So the Mixolydian chord within this grouping of 6 is represented outer circle clockwise position, which in this case is the D major chord. So the chord progression that's going on in this song, We Can Work It Out by the Beatles, it starts on a D major chord, it ends on a D major chord. Most people that listen to this would probably be like, yeah, D major chord, that's the tonal center. It's the Mixolydian perspective of this key signature. All right, so we're starting out in D Mixolydian. The song then moves on to do this. So it moves to an A major chord. So there's no A major chord found in this starting key signature that we're in, but there is an A major chord found in the key signature, the parent key signature of D major. And that's actually where the chorus moves to. That's why I find this interesting, because the song starts out D mixolydian, it then moves to B minor, which is actually the relative minor of the parent major key of D major. So instead of starting out in just the same key of the parent key of D major and then remaining in that same key, moving to the minor perspective or the Aeolian perspective of that key, the Beatles said, you know what, let's be a little bit creative. Let's start out in D mixolydian and then we'll move to B minor. So they're starting in one key signature, moving to the next key signature. So the chorus goes like this. Those are the 4 chords used. That last chord that I played, that F sharp major chord, that's a borrowed chord. That's an out of key chord. That's another thing. When you're playing within a key signature, just because you have your 3 major and your 3 minor chords that are part of that key, it's not to say that you can't use other chords. You absolutely can. Those are labeled as borrowed chords. So this is a very common outside chord to use in any key, the one that's in the inner circle clockwise position within the grouping of 6 on the circle of fifths, which in this case would be an F sharp minor chord, which has been made into an F sharp major chord. This is very, very common. Listen to Hotel California. Hotel California is also in the key of B minor. It also makes use of this F sharp major chord. Super, super common outside chord to be used, and it's being used here. So again, this song starts out in D mixolydian. It then switches to B Aeolian, which is coming from the parent major key of D major. So the next song I want to talk about is Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. So this is played on the piano. I want to try to do my best to explain it using the guitar. But this is a really, really nice example of a parallel key change. It starts out in the key of C major, it then moves to the key of C minor, and then back to the key of C major. That's what a parallel key change is. Anytime you have the same root note, so in this case the root note would be C, and you're switching from C major to C minor, both being C, that's considered a parallel key change. So let's see how this is done. So this song starts out with a C major chord. It then moves the bass note down by 1/2 step. So this is known as a C over B. That's what slash chords are. You're keeping the C major chord and you're just changing the bass note. So this is a lot easier to do on a piano because you can just play the C chord with your right hand and then just move the bass notes down with your left hand. Trying to do it on a guitar, I haven't worked out an arrangement for it. I'm just trying to quickly just go through the ideas just for the sake of this video. But you could do something like... All right, so just kind of move that down, remove fingers, just whatever kind of makes it sound the best for your ear to make a guitar version of it. So after that, it then moves down to a C over B flat chord, which again means you're just playing the C major chord, but the bass note is now changed to a B flat note. So to do this on the guitar, it's just easier for me just to play a B flat chord instead of trying to figure out a way to play a C major over B flat chord. So I might do something like this. You're still getting the same effect. It's the bass note that really kind of gives you like, hey, this is out of key stuff happening right now. So just playing a B flat major chord in full as opposed to a C over B flat type of weird chord like that, you're still going to get the same effect. So that chord right there, that's the outside chord. So if this remained in C major the entire time, if the entire song was 100% in C major, you would just say, yeah, that's a borrowed chord. It's in the key of C major. That B flat major chord, that's a borrowed chord. That's what you would do. But that's kind of giving you like some foreshadowing of what's to come, because what's to come in this song, in the choruses or the next part of the song, whatever you want to call it, is actually in the key of C minor. So if you look at the chords found in the key of C minor, you got a B flat major chord in there. So you're just kind of foreshadowing of what's to come. So it starts out on a C, moves to a C over B, moves to a B flat, moves to an F, which is the 4 chord in the key of C major. All right, so the verse goes around a couple times doing that same chord progression right there, and it's right at the point at the F major chord. That's the point where the key change occurs. So you already got some foreshadowing. You already heard that B flat major chord. You already heard hints of C minor. All right, you already heard hints of the key of C minor. So this is the point where C minor kicks in. So the chord progression now is an A flat chord to a B flat chord to a C minor chord. Actually, it's a C major chord now, which again would be a borrowed chord. So you're in the key of C minor. The ear is expecting the C minor chord. And in fact, the lead guitar player is taking advantage of that. The lead guitar player in this song is playing minor pentatonic stuff, minor licks, just that gritty sounding C minor type of soloing stuff. But the piano player is playing a C major chord. They're still saying, oh no, don't forget about that C major stuff that's happening. We started out in C major. I know we're in C minor now. I know the lead guitar player is playing C minor stuff, but don't forget this song is supposed to be a happy C major song. So the piano player is over there going like this. I'm on my way home, sweet home. C major chord. All right, so this is a great example of a parallel key change. It starts out in the key of C major. It moves to the key of C minor. But during the C major part, it gives hints of the C minor key. And then while in the key of C minor, it's saying, nope, we're not fully in C minor. Don't forget we started out in C major, so let's keep that C major chord in there. So it's just a very nice example of blending two parallel keys together. All right, so the next example I want to talk about is Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. So this uses what is known as a minor third up key change. So it starts out in the parent key of G major. And I guess you could say that this is the Aeolian perspective of this key, or the relative minor version of this key. Most people would probably say this is in the key of E minor, but the key of E minor is a relative mode. You know, it's one of the possible perspectives of the parent major key of G major. Whatever you want to call it, we're in this key signature right here. These are the chords that are being played. So that's the whoa, living on a prayer, the part, you know, all the people sing along to that in the bar. They all love that part. And then it does something like this, which is the thing that happens right before the key change. The key change being the exact same thing I just played, except it's a minor third up. All right, so it's a minor third up. What's that mean? That just means that I took the entire chord progression that I started out with originally and I moved it up by 3 semitones. Semitones are frets on the guitar. 3 semitones is a minor third. So this could also be considered a parallel key change, although most people probably wouldn't call this a parallel key change. Most people would probably say that this is starting out in the key of E minor and then moving to the key of G minor. So you wouldn't say E to G. You wouldn't refer to that as parallel. E to E would be parallel, or G to G would be parallel. But if you're calling the original key signature that the song starts out, if you're saying, hey, that's the key signature of G major, and then you're moving to the new key of G minor, in that case, if you're labeling each of the keys in that manner, then you could also say that that's a parallel key change. Just something to think about, but for all intents and purposes, most people probably aren't going to say that. Most people are going to say it started out in E minor, it moved to the key of G minor, therefore it's a minor third up key change. Super common type of key change. All right, so this next example, we're going to talk about Whitney Houston's Dance with Somebody. The song starts out in the key of C major, and it then does what is sometimes referred to as the Disney key change, because this is just like a... it makes things happier. So it starts out in a major key and then it moves up by one whole step, or 2 semitones. So it starts out in the key of C major, and it then moves to the key of D major. So C to D is 2 semitones higher, or one whole step. So anytime you have that type of key change, that's known as the Disney key change. I don't know if everyone refers to it as the Disney key change, but I've heard it called that a few times in my life, so that's how I think of it anytime I hear that key change. So the chord progression is in the original key. It starts out in the parent major key of C major. A very common chord progression, if you can imagine Whitney saying, "Whoa, I want to dance with somebody, a bit of heat with somebody to love." I sound just like her, don't I? I mean, you didn't even know the difference between me and Whitney, did you? But that's how it goes. And then when she gets higher in the end, she does that Disney key change, switching to the key of D major. Whoa, I want to dance with somebody. So it's the same chord progression, it just did the Disney key change. So yeah, it's a very common key change, just a whole step up. Alright, so the last example I want to give in this video is Eric Clapton's Layla, and this is what I would consider to be just an abrupt key change. So this is just where you start out in a key and you're not moving to like a parallel minor or a parallel major. It doesn't have the label of the Disney key change like the last example. It's abrupt. I just call this an abrupt key change. So Layla starts out, and I guess you could say that the chorus parts, these would be the chorus parts, are in the key of D minor. The chords are D minor, C major, B flat major. So that puts you in this key. This is the parent key, or the parent major key of F major. There's no F major chord present here. It's just the D minor chord within this grouping of 6, C major and B flat major. And it goes like this. The verse kicks in and it switches to the key of C sharp minor, which comes from the parent major key of E major. All right, so that's kind of an abrupt key change. So playing both back to back, it's going to sound something like this. All right, so that's just 2 very different keys from one another. The key of D minor and the key of C sharp minor are only a semitone apart, or 1 half step apart. But from a musical perspective, those are very different keys. If you look at the notes that make up the key of D minor, or the relative major, which would be F major, if you look at the notes that make up that key compared to the notes that make up the key that you're moving to, which is E major, has the relative minor of C sharp minor, you can see that they're very different keys. So this is an example of an abrupt key change, but it sounds really, really cool. You know, Layla just wouldn't be the same if it didn't have that. So just something to think about. Anyway, so those are going to be the examples I give for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. Thanks for watching.